Hello and welcome back to our last history lesson of this week. In fact, this history lesson is more like an art lesson, so I hope you enjoy it. What we're going to do is we're going to use the ideas you came up with when designing your brooch in the last lesson, and we are going to create that brooch using salt dough. And we'll run through the process of how you do it. We'll talk about what the idea behind the brooches were and how you make it, how you can decorate it at the very end. So, in our last lesson, we talked about jewellery being a way that Anglo-Saxons could show their status, where they are positioned within their group. The more ornate their brooches or jewellery was, the more filled with precious stones or metals, the higher up or the higher the standing they might have within their group. So when you're looking at these designs, what you're looking at is the fact that they've got colour in them and the use of metals and intricate design. The more intricate the design, the more status that it gives you, the more use of colour. When you're looking at the next couple, you've got a use of a precious stone in order to show their status. Or a combination of both, some colour, some stone, and some precious metals. And this last one is all about the detail in it and the iconography. So you're looking at the images which were in the actual brooch itself or the jewellery. And this is important as well because that can link to either their pagan beliefs or their new Christian beliefs, or it could link to their group and their family. So your task was to design your own Anglo-Saxon brooch. And you could either research and follow an original design or create one entirely of your own. So this is the one we created. This is our design. So we're going to use this design now and create a brooch out of salt dough. And for this, you'll need some salt and some flour. So throughout today's task, you can pause and play whenever you need to in order to get through the instructions in order to get to the end. But make sure that whenever you're doing anything, you're making sure it's on a protected surface and make sure you tidy up after yourself. You're not leaving too much mess. What you'll need is 2 cups of flour and 1 cup of salt. And that's roughly about 250 grams of flour and 125 grams of salt. And then you put them into a mixing bowl and just gently mix them together so they're all mixed together. Then bit by bit, small part at a time, stir about 3/4 of a cup of water. So it's about 200 mils of water. But what you're starting to do, you don't necessarily need to put it all in. What you'll notice is the more you put in, the more it will start to what's called bind together. It will become gloopy and go together until it forms a ball like this. And then when it's formed a nice ball and is held together, that's enough water. If you keep adding too much water, it becomes very soggy and doesn't hold together as well and takes a lot longer for you to do anything with it. You turn the mixture out onto a flat surface and knead the dough and knead it together, which is pushing it between your hands to have what's a smooth dough, and you'll feel that as you stretch it out, it will go nicely together. Then you need to roll the dough out till it's about 1 centimetre thick to create a nice flat surface. An easy way to do this, or a way you can do this, if you place 2 pencils either side of your dough and then a rolling pin on top of the pencils and roll it across there, you'll get the thickness of the pencils the entire way. And this just helps make sure that the thickness is the same the entire way over. Whereas if you just use a rolling pin on its own, what can happen is you get it thicker and thinner in different places. So it's just about finding a way that does it. You can also, if you use a baking tin like this, as long as you've got a long enough rolling pin, you can actually use the sides of the baking tray, which lip up, is about 1 centimetre or slightly thicker than that. But you could roll it across the top of there in order to flatten the dough out on there. multiple ways of doing it, but what you're trying to do is use the items around you in order to help you make sure that you've got that even thickness. Next, what you need to do is mark a circle. So you could use a bowl, you could use the top of a cup or mug, and just mark out that circle. So you've got a nice shape, because what you're going to do is then use just a standard butter knife, something that's blunt but quite fine. And you're going to cut round that shape to make a circle of salt dough, which you'll see you'll have like this. What I would do at this stage, after you carefully cut it out, around the edge, just run your finger around the edge of the circle, just to take that rough edge off and just to smooth it out. What you'll find is what you want when after you baked it, that it to be nice and smooth on the edges, because then it forms a very nice brooch. You'll have some extra spare dough, and you can use that however you like, either to create other brooches or to add on to this brooch later. Like in your drawing, split your dough roughly into quarters with a cross. Do it very lightly so that it doesn't stand out too much. Then, using your design and using tools, the easiest ones to use for doing this sort of thing will be things like the very tip of a fork or the bottom end of a spoon. You might have other things like the top of a pencil, blunt pencil, you could do it with as well, just in order to create the pattern similar to what you've got on your design. And similar to what you've done, you can either carve it in like we've done here and carve the design in, or you could take your extra bits and actually build slightly on top. Don't make it too deep, but just build an extra little bit on top if you want it raised. But make sure if you're going to do that, that you make sure the join between the two doughs is secure. So just score it a little bit on both sides, just a very small amount of water, and put it on, and it will just help it bind together, push it down firmly, and it should stay together. Then, just like your drawing, you do a section at a time, build it up so that finally you have your full design on your brooch. And what you should see, it should still be relatively symmetrical, split into your quarters so you can see that design nicely. Then what you're going to do is you're going to place this brooch on a baking tray and put it in the oven at about 180 degrees C for about 20 minutes. You might need help doing this just in order to make sure it's safe when doing it. So get an adult to help you do it, and make sure you keep an eye on it, because depending on how big they are, that 20 minutes will change. And what you're looking for is to bake in the oven, and it will go hard. So once cooled, so after it's baked for roughly 20 minutes, take it out, put it on the side, and leave it to cool for a bit. After it's cooled, you can then add colour to it. So you could do this with paint. You could do it with felt tips. Any sorts of colours you've got should work onto the salt dough. And what you'll have at the end is this hard baked design, which has created a brooch for you. Sorry. Make sure you tidy up after you finish your design. One interesting thing is what you'll notice, and very similar to here, is as it bakes, it does warp the shape slightly, it does raise very slightly. And although this does change its design slightly, it actually seems like it does age it slightly. You imagine if something's been underground for a little bit and then has been dug up, actually it would come out being a bit of an odd shape, being bent and that sort of thing. And that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Have fun creating your brooches, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.